Demonic energy surged as the seventh king stood in midair, his figure wrapped in the sinister glint of the demon emperor armor, which shone with a cold, metallic gleam. An intense, bloodthirsty aura radiated from him, amplifying his terrifying presence and quickening the heartbeat of anyone nearby. 8,000 strands of purple-gold dragon patterns swirled around Lin Dong, and the ancient roar of dragons echoed in the air. In his eyes, one black and one silver, a strange light gleamed. Boom! In an explosive burst, Lin Dong charged forward, fists transforming into enormous purple-gold dragon claws, which he aimed fiercely at the seventh king. Yet, the seventh king simply sneered, remaining completely still as Lin Dong's devastating dragon claws descended on him with the force to level mountains. Clang! Clang! A sharp metallic sound erupted, yet the seventh king remained unmoved, his demon emperor armor unmarred. He looked at Lin Dong with a cold smile, the mockery in his eyes growing more intense. Slowly, he extended a finger, covered in dark armor, and pointed into the air. Whoosh! A demonic beam shot from his fingertip, tearing through Lin Dong's dragon claws imbued with the power of 8,000 purple-gold dragon patterns. If that's all you've got, the seventh king chuckled, but his eyes suddenly narrowed as he saw a figure charging at him, with one arm transforming into a liquid state. Within that flowing arm, lightning and dark light intertwined, and faintly, two ancient symbols rose and fell. You've actually mastered the power of the Ancestral Talisman to this extent? The seventh king's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, but he quickly clenched his fist and struck forward, a blow stripped of any embellishment, carrying only raw, annihilating power. Bang! The liquid-like fist clashed directly with the seventh king's armored fist, the impact warping the surrounding space. Demonic energy surged, forcing Lin Dong to retreat once more. Swish! Yet as he fell back, Lin Dong waved his sleeve, and a burst of light shot out, growing instantly into a massive stone monument. Ancient waves of power radiated from its surface. The Great Wilderness Monument? The seventh king stared at the monument, momentarily taken aback, then shook his head. So, even such a divine relic is in your hands. A pity it hasn't yet returned to its peak power. Otherwise, you might pose a challenge today. Buzz. As he spoke, the Great Wilderness Monument radiated a dazzling light and pressed down upon him, a massive, ancient array forming beneath its base. Lin Dong summoned the monument, but didn't stop there. With a flick of his finger, a rainbow glow appeared, and the Xintian Palace materialized, quaking with divine energy as countless artifacts poured out, transforming into a torrent that surged toward the seventh king. Xintian Palace? The appearance of the Xintian Palace prompted another laugh from the seventh king. It seemed this young man wielded 2 of the top 10 treasures on the ancient divine relic ranking. An impressive array of techniques, but futile. The seventh king's smile turned icy as he lifted his hand, stopping the Great Wilderness Monument in its tracks. Then, with a powerful kick, he shattered the torrent of divine artifacts pouring from Xintian Palace, reducing them to dust in a display of immense power. Boom! Boom! Laughing, the seventh king's fists flew, slamming down on the Great Wilderness Monument like heavy mountains, forcing it to retreat. He also completely fended off the torrent from the Xintian Palace, proving his strength to be terrifyingly unrivaled. Covered in the demon emperor armor, the seventh king's power was nearly insurmountable. Lin Dong watched as the seventh king held back both the Great Wilderness Monument and the onslaught from Xintian Palace, his gaze growing increasingly solemn. Taking a deep breath, he slowly closed his eyes, and a ray of light appeared at the center of his forehead, splitting open. As the light parted, a mysterious eye emerged, a gleaming eye of the Ancestral Talisman. The moment the eye of the Ancestral Talisman appeared, the seventh king's expression finally hardened. The eye of the Ancestral Talisman? Lin Dong's aura rapidly converged, but the eye of the Ancestral Talisman on his forehead only grew brighter. In the next instant, he opened his eyes. Swoosh! The moment Lin Dong's eyes opened, the eye of the Ancestral Talisman released a radiant beam filled with dark light and lightning. The beam of light instantly pierced through space, and in the blink of an eye, it reached the front of the seventh king's palace, then fiercely struck his chest. Boom! The dazzling light, accompanied by an energy shockwave, spread out, and the brilliance gradually faded. The seventh king's palace was still standing in the void, but a crack appeared on the chest of his demon emperor armor. Lin Dong looked at this scene, his expression changing. He hadn't expected that even after activating the eye of the ancestral talisman, he could only tear a small opening in the demon emperor armor. Just how terrifying was this armor? The seventh king's palace also looked down at the crack in his armor. His gaze darkened, and it was clear that Lin Dong's attack had infuriated him. This was a gift from their emperor, and such damage was close to a humiliation for them. Have you had enough fun yet? The smile on the seventh king's face faded entirely. He suddenly took a step forward, his figure moving as if teleporting, appearing before Lin Dong in an instant. His massive palm then slammed toward Lin Dong in a furious strike. Roar! 8,000 purple-golden dragon patterns rose and formed into a giant purple-golden dragon, colliding violently with the seventh king's palace. However, as soon as they made contact, the purple-golden light shattered, and the dragon was torn apart. Lin Dong used this moment to retreat at high speed, but the powerful shockwave still caused a muffled grunt from his throat. The seventh king's palace, dressed in the demon emperor armor, was indeed formidable. With one powerful palm that sent Lin Dong flying, the seventh king's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He clearly no longer intended to drag this out. His body moved again, pursuing Lin Dong. As his demonic fist swung, surging demonic energy swirled around him. Boom, boom, boom. The two clashed fiercely again in the sky, but this time Lin Dong had clearly fallen into a disadvantageous position. The demon emperor armor on the seventh king's body was incredibly strong. Even though Lin Dong was using the power of the ancestral talisman, it was difficult to inflict significant damage on him. On the other hand, he had to be extremely cautious in facing the seventh king's attacks. If it weren't for the protection of the primal dragon bone, he feared he would have already been seriously injured. Even so, his situation wasn't looking good. Boom! Another violent clash occurred, and Lin Dong's throat grew sweet. A mouthful of blood spurted out, which he immediately spat onto the ground. His eyes, however, became even more vicious. You have quite a few treasures on you. This body of yours, if it were refined further, might even be able to contend with the Lord of the Wilderness, but unfortunately, I'm not interested in leaving such a potential enemy alive, the seventh king's palace said, looking at Lin Dong, who despite his vicious onslaught, still managed to stand his ground. He couldn't help but shake his head. His gaze turned colder, and just as he was about to strike again, a sharp sword beam suddenly shot toward him from behind. Although the sword beam was powerful, it wasn't enough to injure him. He merely smiled lightly, reached out with his hand, and crushed the sword beam with ease. This level of ability, he sneered, but before his laughter had even fully faded, a graceful figure suddenly appeared in front of him. A green sword, like a venomous snake darting out of its hole, struck toward him with lightning speed. Overestimating yourself? A strange light covered the green sword, and the seventh king's eyes narrowed sharply. Just as he was about to retreat, the sword suddenly accelerated and pierced directly into the crack on his demon emperor armor. The demon emperor armor, which had withstood a full-force attack from a reincarnation powerhouse, was now pierced half an inch by the green sword. Black blood began to flow out along the blade. The intense pain in his chest twisted the seventh king's face. He immediately slammed a palm out, sending Ling Qingzhu flying backward. Blood sprayed from her mouth as the silk veil covering her body was blown away. The seventh king's eyes filled with murderous intent as he looked at Ling Qingzhu flying through the air. His hand clenched, and a thick stream of demonic energy surged from his palm, blasting through the air toward her. Ling Qingzhu, seeing the seventh king's attack, gritted her teeth and gripped her sword tightly, preparing to meet the attack head-on. But before she could act, a figure appeared in front of her like a ghost, and with a low roar, a vast surge of purple-golden dragon patterns surged. Lin Dong's fist slammed hard into the demonic energy flood. Boom! The space collapsed at this moment, and Lin Dong's body was struck with immense force. A mouthful of blood spurted out, and his arm twisted painfully. The agony from his arm made cold sweat drip down his forehead. Heh, what a touching scene. Since you want to protect her, I'll just kill her right in front of you. The seventh king sneered as he watched, his grin growing ever more twisted. In an instant, he vanished. Watch out! As the seventh king disappeared, Lin Dong's face shifted, and he quickly spun around, pulling Ling Qingzhu into his arms. Just as he shielded her, the seventh king reappeared behind him with a sinister smile. His palm, brimming with dark demonic energy, struck Lin Dong's back mercilessly. Thud! Lin Dong spat out a mouthful of fresh blood as he and Ling Qingzhu tumbled downward, crashing heavily into the forest below. Ha ha! The seventh king laughed without a trace of restraint, raising his hand and summoning multiple torrents of demonic energy that streaked across the sky, mercilessly pounding down upon them. In the forest, Lin Dong clutched Ling Qingzhu as he dodged, though some of the attacks struck close. Each time, he took the brunt with his back, protecting Ling Qingzhu so she remained unharmed. Boom! Boom! The relentless attacks tore open the ground beneath them, sending Lin Dong rolling as his back became a mass of blood and wounds. Despite the intense pain, he struggled to stay on his feet, his body trembling violently as blood trickled from his lips. That bastard, Lin Dong muttered, gritting his teeth against the waves of dizziness threatening to overwhelm him. Ling Qingzhu gazed at his face, now so close to hers, blood staining his features. His determined yet battered expression stirred her emotions, and she bit her lip, her usually cold eyes now soft and conflicted. "Why are you fighting so desperately?" she whispered, almost to herself. Lin Dong gave a pained grin, his heavy breaths brushing against her delicate face. "If I can't even protect a woman, then what kind of man would I be?" Even with his iron will, the excruciating pain within him caused cold sweat to bead on his forehead. This time, his injuries were severe. "You fool!" Ling Qingzhu murmured, a hint of mist clouding her gaze. Her slender hand reached up to his face, gently wiping away the blood from his lips. Then, a soft, unexpected smile bloomed on her usually graceful face, as beautiful as a rare flower in full bloom. "I suddenly feel like teaching you the supreme perception technique. What do you say?" Lin Dong blinked, momentarily stunned. He managed a wry smile and replied, "Now's not exactly the best time to learn the supreme perception technique." Biting her lip, Ling Qingzhu said, "Can you buy us some time to hold him off?" Lin Dong thought for a moment. This guy's powerful, but delaying him shouldn't be impossible. With that, he clenched his fist, and a light formation appeared in his palm, expanding rapidly into a massive formation that enveloped the forest around them. Whoosh! As the ancient cosmic formation took shape, Lin Dong also released the Great Wilderness Monument and Xintian Palace, sending them both into the formation to reinforce it. The defensive setup was now solid enough to buy some time, even against the formidable Seventh King. But these efforts took a toll. Lin Dong's veins throbbed, the pain drawing even more cold sweat from his brow. His injuries were severe, and a wave of dizziness threatened to cloud his mind. Still, he fought to stay conscious. Losing awareness now could mean death. This ancient cosmic formation should delay him for a bit, but that's all it can do, Lin Dong panted, staring at the protective barrier that sealed off the forest from the outside. "Don't worry, I'm not that easy to get rid of. If it comes to it, I'll just self-destruct the ancient cosmic formation. That'll give this guy a headache," Lin Dong muttered, gritting his teeth. The price would be steep, but there was no other choice. Ling Qingzhu shook her head slightly, glancing at him. Lin Dong suddenly realized the ambiguous position they were in. He had fallen right onto Ling Qingzhu's delicate body. The soft sensation under him stirred certain thoughts, but he knew it wasn't right. Forcing a strained smile, he attempted to push himself up, but his injuries flared, causing him to cough up another mouthful of blood. His body weakened, and he fell heavily back onto Ling Qingzhu. With Lin Dong's weight pressing down, Ling Qingzhu let out a soft gasp, turning her head slightly to see his pained face, still contorted from the strain. Seeing his rare vulnerability, a gentle expression gradually softened her gaze. After a moment's hesitation, her delicate hand reached out, gently wiping the sweat from his forehead. "We need to leave here soon," Lin Dong whispered, his lips close to her ear, his voice strained. "I'll detonate the ancient cosmic formation shortly. Once I do, take me away. The devouring heavenly corpse will cover our retreat." He could feel a wave of weakness surging within him, sapping his strength quickly. This time, he was taking a huge loss. Not only would he lose the ancient cosmic formation, but he likely wouldn't recover the devouring heavenly corpse either. It was the greatest loss he'd suffered since his encounter in Alien Demon City. Yet, hearing his words, Ling Qingzhu shook her head slightly. She suddenly extended her jade-like hand, revealing a small, dark red pill resting in her palm, as smooth as white jade. "Here, take it," she said softly, placing the pill by his lips. "A healing pill?" Lin Dong blinked, not questioning her intent, and swallowed it. But almost immediately, he sensed something amiss. As the pill entered his body, an intense heat surged forth, and with it, a wave of dizziness clouded his mind, his eyelids growing heavy under the haze. What did you give me?" he murmured, his vision blurring. "Nothing, just rest. Everything will be fine when you wake up." Ling Qingzhu's slender hand gently stroked his face, her voice soft as she bit her lip. Lin Dong sensed something was off, but the overwhelming weakness from his injuries was too much. Darkness closed in as his eyes shut, pulling him into unconsciousness. Ling Qingzhu looked at his sleeping face, her flawless cheeks tinged with red. She bit her lips slightly, her voice barely a whisper. "The supreme perception technique is the unshared secret of our 9 heavens Taiching Palace. It can't be taught to others because, technically, it's not even a technique. It's an intricate form of perception. The power it grants comes from connecting with that place of perception. And, to enable you to sense that unique existence, other than inheriting it at birth, the only way is through dual cultivation." If Lin Dong were awake, he would be stunned at this revelation. He had never imagined that the supreme perception technique could only be attained this way. No wonder she had reacted so strongly in the bamboo grove when he mentioned it. Ling Qingzhu rose gently, casting a glance at Lin Dong. She bit her lip again and spoke quietly, "You and his body, come out." Light flickered across Lin Dong's body, and Yin emerged. He looked at Ling Qingzhu's flushed cheeks, and couldn't help but chuckle, though his expression turned slightly bemused. You gave him," Yin asked with a dry laugh, "an aphrodisiac? If he wants to learn the supreme perception technique, this is the only way." Ling Qingzhu murmured, her eyes cast down, her face flushed. Yin was speechless for a moment, finally understanding. Likely, from the moment Lin Dong expressed interest in learning the supreme perception technique, Ling Qingzhu had foreseen this situation. This explained why she had once asked him to stop mentioning it, clearly indicating her own struggle with the matter. Though she always seemed calm and indifferent, even Ling Qingzhu couldn't face this with complete composure, especially when the person involved was Lin Dong. Following him on this journey, she'd chosen this method to resolve her internal conflict and summon the courage to make certain decisions. But even with her resolve, when the moment arrived, she still lacked the confidence, opting instead for this amusingly roundabout approach. Despite her pride and composure, in the end, she was just a woman, feeling shy and uncertain in matters of the heart. Yin sighed. "Could you do me a favor?" Qingzhu suddenly raised her head and looked at Yin. "What is it?" "Please, don't tell him about this." Gently, Qingzhu used her delicate hand to wipe the bloodstain from Lin Dong's mouth, her voice soft. "Why?" Yin was taken aback, clearly not understanding her thoughts. For a woman like Qingzhu, such things obviously carried great weight. Normally, she even hid her face behind a veil, and it was nearly impossible for a man to see her true face. Her purity remained untouched, and in this life, she had only been tainted by Lin Dong, purely by accident. The sacrifice she was making now was by no means easy. "I don't want him to feel only guilt toward me." Qingzhu shook her head. Yin nodded with a bitter smile, realizing that Qingzhu understood why Lin Dong was so determined to learn the supreme perception technique. If he knew the extent of her sacrifice, Lin Dong's nature would certainly make him feel deeply indebted to her, a sentiment Qingzhu's pride would never allow. I'll do my best to keep this a secret for you. Thank you. Qingzhu smiled radiantly, a charm blossoming in that moment, making even Yin lose himself in a daze. With a sigh, he drifted away. The complexities between men and women, they truly are enough to make one's head spin. Watching Yin disappear, Qingzhu pressed her cool hand against her cheek. Then, she looked at Lin Dong, raised her hand, and with a wave, a flash of light emerged from her sleeve, transforming into a bamboo house radiating a gentle glow. This was clearly a spiritual treasure, though it seemed only suited for shelter rather than anything else. Carefully, Qingzhu lifted Lin Dong and carried him into the bamboo house, placing him gently on the bed. Sitting at the edge of the bed, her beautiful eyes gazed at his familiar face. Years ago, when that face still bore traces of youthful innocence, she had first met him. Back then, perhaps she never imagined she would do such things for him. If she had known, perhaps she would have struck him down on that mountain, saving herself from all the trouble that followed. She stared at Lin Dong for a long time, and a faint blush rose on her flawless face. Finally, biting her lip, she stood up slowly, her hand trembling slightly as she loosened her sash. The snow-white gown slipped to the ground, revealing her perfect, unblemished body within the bamboo house. Her slight tremor created an intense, breathtaking allure. Back then, you were like this. Now it's your turn to pay for it. She looked at the unconscious man on the bed, his body radiating heat. Remembering their past, the times he protected her, and his blood-stained, exhausted face, she couldn't help but smile faintly, though tears welled up in her eyes, trickling down her cheeks. With a final wave of her hand, darkness enveloped the bamboo house. In that darkness, a passionate radiance blossomed, filling the space with a sense of spring's warmth. Outside, demonic energy filled the sky. The seventh king stood above, his face cold as he gazed at the enormous, ancient formation below, his eyes flickering with a chilling gleam. The ancient cosmic formation, that brat, he truly is astonishing. He stared at the ancient formation he knew well, letting out a cold laugh. He had once experienced its power firsthand in ancient times, though then it had been wielded by the ancestral Talisman master. In those days, countless alien demons had fallen to this formation. 5 kings, heed my command. Corrode this formation. The 7th king waved his hand with a sneer. Although the ancient cosmic formation was fearsome, Lin Dong hadn't yet mastered its essence, and his strength was far from comparable to that of the ancestral Talisman master. What did he have to fear? Yes. Above, the 5 alien demon kings maintaining the shield of demonic energy answered instantly. Waves of demonic energy surged forth, descending upon the ancient cosmic formation. Though the formation's power constantly purified the dark energy, even more demonic energy soon replaced it, slowly consuming the formation's strength. The 7th king sat cross-legged in the air, a cold gleam in his eyes. The more remarkable Lin Dong's display, the stronger his resolve to kill him. Their clash today had shown him Lin Dong's threat. If left unchecked, this one could eventually become as formidable as the ancient 8 masters. A potential enemy like this had to be eliminated swiftly. With that thought, the 7th king's gaze on the ancient cosmic formation grew colder. In the haze, Lin Dong's consciousness seemed to be drifting endlessly. His awareness was extremely vague, but occasionally he could sense some inexplicable softness. His consciousness, fragile like that of a newborn, floated aimlessly. Amidst the blur, it felt as if another gentle presence was entwining with his, protecting him closely. The sensation was incredibly wonderful. Because of this feeling, his consciousness moved closer, intertwining with the other presence. A wave of intense heat passed through him, and in the blur, it seemed like his body shifted slightly. Faintly, there was a sound of a woman softly humming as she bit her red lips. His consciousness drifted through the vastness of space. In the distance, a faint glow appeared, resembling the chaotic light born at the dawn of the world. When his consciousness was still some distance away from that chaos, it halted. The glow caused sharp pain in his awareness, and he dared not approach. At that moment of confusion and helplessness, the soft presence gently enveloped him, like a delicate jade hand pulling him closer toward the chaotic light. However, the glow seemed to hurt that gentle presence as well, causing ripples in it. But it remained tightly wrapped around Lin Dong's consciousness, shielding him from the painful sting. Though Lin Dong's vague awareness could barely sense her enduring pain, a surge of inexplicable emotion rose within him. His consciousness suddenly expanded, wrapping around the soft presence instead. Faintly, there was the sound of a woman's soft gasp, as if his consciousness had pulled her into his body. The two intertwined, and together, they finally entered the chaotic realm. A strange and indescribable sensation quietly arose, as if it transcended some world. Time passed slowly. A sense of extreme clarity surged through his awareness, flooding him like a tidal wave. Eventually, his vague consciousness began to gradually awaken. When Lin Dong opened his eyes again, the lush forest filled his vision. He lay on the ground, slightly raising his head to see a massive formation rippling intensely before him. A slight dizziness remained in his mind. Lin Dong shook his head to clear it, then sat up. His black eyes were still somewhat dazed. "You're awake?" A soft voice came from ahead. Lin Dong looked up and saw Ling Qingzhu standing nearby, her clear eyes quietly watching him. At this moment, her face was partially covered by a thin veil, and her delicate, slender figure was accentuated by the white dress she wore, displaying near-perfect curves. Her previously tied-up long hair had spilled down like a waterfall, cascading to her rounded hips. For some reason, she now seemed to carry a lazy air, and that sensation made Lin Dong's heart skip a beat as he just awoke. "You've changed," Lin Dong couldn't help but say as he looked at Ling Qingzhu. "Changed? How?" Ling Qingzhu approached and gently crouched before him. Her usually cold eyes softened with a faint smile. "You've become even more beautiful." Lin Dong smiled. He was somewhat surprised by this, as it seemed rare for her to make such a familiar gesture, even toward him. Lin Dong's words were not untrue. For some reason, Ling Qingzhu now exuded a breathtaking beauty that was not simply in her looks, but also in her aura. Upon hearing this flattery, Ling Qingzhu smiled faintly and then spoke softly, "Stop looking. The ancient cosmic formation won't hold for much longer. We should figure out how to get out of this situation first." At these words, Lin Dong immediately snapped back to his senses. He looked up at the violently trembling ancient cosmic formation and quickly got to his feet, but then noticed something strange. "My injuries?" Lin Dong was surprised to see that the injuries he had sustained during his battle with the Seventh King's Hall had completely healed, and even the primordial energy he had exhausted earlier had fully recovered. "Was it the pill you gave me?" Lin Dong looked at Ling Qingzhu, vaguely recalling that she had given him something before he lost consciousness. Ling Qingzhu slightly turned her gaze away. "It's the Supreme Perception Technique. I've already taught it to you." "Ah." Lin Dong was stunned again. "When did this happen?" "If you calm your mind, you'll naturally sense it. But that's all I can do. As for how much you can cultivate the Supreme Perception Technique in the future, it depends entirely on you," Ling Qingzhu said as she stood up. Lin Dong furrowed his brow, then also stood up and looked at her. "What happened while I was unconscious? What is this Supreme Perception Technique?" Ling Qingzhu shook her head gently. "You promised me not to ask about the Supreme Perception Technique anymore." Lin Dong gazed at Ling Qingzhu's slightly lowered eyes, paused in silence, and then nodded with a wry smile. "You should take some time to grasp the Supreme Perception Technique. Given our current situation, if we can find a way out, that would be best," Ling Qingzhu said softly, turning her head as she spoke. She then walked over to a nearby hillside, her gaze blankly fixed on the distance, her expression somewhat dazed. Lin Dong watched her graceful figure as a gentle breeze swept through, stirring her dark, ink-like hair. A faint ache rose in his heart for reasons he couldn't quite explain. He shook his head hard, slowly calming his emotions, then closed his eyes, sensing a mysterious sensation that had suddenly appeared in his mind. This sensation wasn't anything tangible. Rather, it felt elusive, formless. Yet when he reached for it, a peculiar power seemed to seep in from an unknown place. What could this possibly be? Lin Dong was utterly bewildered. Above, the ancient cosmic formation trembled more and more intensely, faintly revealing the raging demonic aura outside. Against the combined assault of the 5 alien demon kings, it was clear the formation could no longer hold out. A resonant hum filled the air, and then the massive ancient cosmic formation dimmed, its glow fading, before transforming into a streak of light that shot down from the sky and fused into Lin Dong's body. Along with the retreat of the ancient cosmic formation, the Great Wilderness Monument and Xintian Palace also returned, clearly drained of much of their energy. As the formation fell, the surrounding mountains were fully exposed to the overwhelming sea of demonic energy. In that dark sea, the 7th king hovered in midair, his eerie gaze locked indifferently on Lin Dong and Ling Qingzhu as they reappeared in his sight. "Heh, it seems today you two won't be escaping death," 7th king said, slowly rising to his feet, a sinister smirk creeping onto his face as he stared at Lin Dong. At this moment, Lin Dong's tightly shut eyes gradually opened, his deep, dark gaze utterly calm, showing no trace of fear in the face of such a dire predicament. 7th king noticed Lin Dong's calm gaze and frowned slightly, sensing a faint sense of unease he couldn't quite place. But he quickly dismissed the thought. How could such a change have come over Lin Dong in less than half an hour? Fine then. Here, the two of you can die as lovers bound by fate, he sneered, extending his palm as terrifying demonic energy gathered in his hand. Lin Dong's expression remained calm. In the next instant, he stepped in front of Ling Qingzhu, saying gently, "Stay behind me. Don't worry. I promise to bring you out, and I'll get you back safely." Ling Qingzhu looked at the slender figure standing in front of her, biting her red lips. Deep within her usually cool gaze, a hint of softness emerged, and in an uncharacteristically tender voice, she murmured, "All right." Lin Dong looked up, his tightly clenched fists slowly relaxing as a fierce surge of energy exploded in his dark eyes. A fierce resolve flashed across Lin Dong's gaze. He stretched out his hand, and a vast thundercloud swiftly gathered above, filling the sky. With a roar, a colossal thunder dragon, thousands of feet long, appeared and then coiled into his hand. Lightning crackled as the thunder dragon shrank rapidly. In moments, it transformed into a massive silver thunderbow, which Lin Dong now held firmly in his grasp. With a cold, unwavering look, Lin Dong aimed his gaze at 7th king above. Slowly, he drew the thunderbow to a full arc, and at its extreme tension, dark energy rapidly converged, forming a black arrow. The arrow's tip pulsed with black light, resembling a tiny vortex. The arrow had not yet left the bow, but the surrounding space was already beginning to show signs of collapse. 7th king's expression stiffened slightly at Lin Dong's actions, and he sneered. "Impressive. The Thunder Ancestral Talisman for the bow, the Devouring Ancestral Talisman for the arrow. You've really mastered using both. But the chasm in our strength is insurmountable. No matter how many tricks you use, it's hopeless." "Is that so?" Lin Dong replied, a faint smile on his face. He took a deep breath, and a moment later, a beam of chaotic light appeared, descending onto the black arrow. The light flowed slowly over the arrow, devoid of any terrifying aura. Instead, the devouring energy that had been surging fiercely within the arrow now became intensely contained, causing the crumbling space around it to gradually stabilize. A faint pallor appeared on Lin Dong's face, but he managed a slight smile towards the 7th king, a grin filled with a sinister edge. With a swift release, Lin Dong let go of the bowstring, his gaze sharpening to a terrifying degree in that instant. Buzz. The black arrow vanished the moment it left the bowstring, and the 7th king's pupils constricted sharply as he watched from the sky. In the next moment, a torrent of demonic energy surged from within him like an ocean. The black sheen of his demon emperor armor gleamed, enveloped by waves of demonic aura, making him look like a god of darkness who straddled heaven and earth, exuding an imposing aura. In front of him, the space abruptly tore open, and a streak of black light burst out. Before the seventh king could react, it struck him squarely. Bang! The seventh king's body trembled violently, and he staggered backward. A sharp cry of pain escaped his lips as the demonic energy around him roiled and surged. The black light pierced through his chest, tearing through the demon emperor armor and exiting through his back. It continued its trajectory, slamming into the demonic barrier above, the one crafted by the combined might of the 5 alien demon kings. Crack! With a crisp sound, the barrier shattered entirely under the impact. Cold moonlight poured down once more. Splurt! The faces of the 5 alien demon kings turned pale, and each spat out black blood, looking on in horror at the figure in the sky. "Seventh king!" they cried out, seeing the seventh king's form sway amidst the churning demonic aura. His gaze was transfixed on the bloody hole in his chest, where black blood flowed freely. The demon emperor armor had been punctured, and fine cracks spread from the edge of the wound. The demon emperor armor had actually been breached? Impossible! The seventh king muttered as he touched the black blood streaming from his chest. Then his eyes widened in fury. Impossible! The demonic energy raging behind him faltered, and a trace of pallor crept onto his face, clearly indicating how heavily he'd been wounded by that single arrow. Below, Lin Dong gazed coldly at the furious seventh king. His hand, still gripping the bowstring, was covered in blood, and his fingers trembled from the power he had poured into that shot. "Seems your precious armor isn't as strong as you thought," Lin Dong sneered. "You." The seventh king's face twisted in rage as he prepared to strike back, but then noticed that Lin Dong's thunder bow was once again raised, with another black arrow forming on the bowstring. This time, seeing the black arrow, the seventh king's body shuddered. He couldn't understand why Lin Dong's attacks had suddenly become so devastating. Even when he had used the eye of the ancestral talisman, he had barely managed to scratch the demon emperor armor. But now, it had been completely pierced, along with his body, and even the demonic barrier had been destroyed. Such power, how could Lin Dong possibly wield it? Black blood still gushed from his chest wound. The seventh king's expression darkened, and with a wave of his hand, the demonic sea surged, enveloping him entirely. "Lin Dong, don't think you can keep up that attack. Impressive as it was, there's no way you can sustain it. Today, I will claim your life." From within the demonic sea, the seventh king's chilling voice echoed from all directions, preventing Lin Dong from locating him. The seventh king was evidently cautious, unwilling to make himself an easy target again. Lin Dong's expression remained stoic as he tightened his grip on the thunder bow. "5 kings, assist me. Together, we'll end this wretch." A fierce shout rang out from the demonic sea, as the seventh king finally swallowed his pride and called upon the support of the 5 alien demon kings to kill Lin Dong. Hearing this, Ling Qingzhu moved to Lin Dong's side, her jade-like hand gripping her green sword tightly, her gaze coldly fixed on the tumultuous demonic sea above. Lin Dong waved his sleeve, and the devouring heavenly corpse appeared once more. His eyes flickered rapidly. The seventh king was right. That previous strike had been as draining as the eye of the ancestral talisman. Given his current strength, he truly couldn't continue the attack indefinitely. For now, he could only rely on the devouring heavenly corpse to buy some time to recover a bit before unleashing the thunder bow and black arrow once more. Despite the power of the seventh king, such a blow would inevitably deal an incomparable amount of damage. However, during the period he couldn't strike, he wondered if Ling Qingzhu and the devouring heavenly corpse alone could withstand the onslaught of the seventh king and the 5 alien demon kings. Kill! As this thought flashed in his mind, a roar brimming with murderous intent echoed from the ocean of demonic energy. 6 beams of dark energy instantly shot toward them with terrifying speed. Focus on recovering first. Ling Qingzhu watched as the seventh king's forces advanced once more, biting her lip. She understood Lin Dong's current state. As her words fell, her long sword began to emit a soft glow. Seeing this, Lin Dong grew anxious. Although he had wounded the seventh king, these alien demons were tenacious beyond reason, Even with such grievous injuries, they still had fight left in them. Ling Qingzhu's power alone could hardly withstand a direct confrontation with them. Humph! You alien demons dare to wreak havoc in my dark city? Do you take the dark hall for an easy target? Yet just as Lin Dong was about to force himself to attack, a fierce shout resounded from afar. Light streaked across the sky, and the land was suddenly cloaked in darkness. In the next instant, a petite figure, accompanied by two figures, shot toward them and landed beside Lin Dong. It was Qing Tan, along with two grand elders of the Dark Hall. Qing Tan? Lin Dong was taken aback at the sight of these unexpected allies, but soon, he let out a breath of relief. Brother Lin Dong, are you all right? Qing Tan looked anxiously at the blood on Lin Dong's hands. We searched within 1,000 miles of Dark City, but couldn't find you. Luckily, we detected an energy fluctuation here and hurried over. Lin Dong shook his head and looked up to the sky. With Qing Tan and her companions now here, he had less to fear from the Seventh King. Above, the demonic sea surged as the 6 members of the Seventh King's forces halted, their faces darkening. What seemed like an easy victory had turned against them. Not only had they failed to kill Lin Dong, but the latter's arrow had inflicted serious damage. Seventh King, what should we do? One of the 5 alien demon kings asked in a low voice. The Seventh King's eyes flashed with malice. Clutching his chest, his pale face twisted as he growled. Since they're here, let's end them all. These ants think they can make me retreat in disgrace? Laughable. Yes. At the Seventh King's command, the 5 alien demon kings' eyes filled with bloodlust. Dark energy swirled around them as they prepared to eradicate everyone below. Seeing this, Qing Tan snorted coldly, gripping the dark, sacred scythe tightly. A flash of light on the blade summoned the scythe spirit. Beside her, the 2 grand elders of the Dark Hall readied their primordial energy, prepared to fight. As tension mounted and both sides prepared to clash, an earth-shattering battle seemed imminent. Boom! But just as the atmosphere reached its breaking point, a deafening rumble of thunder suddenly shook the skies. Everyone froze and looked up to see the dark horizon light up brilliantly as a realm of thunder spread rapidly across the sky. Amid the blinding lightning, a towering figure strode forward on a path of thunder, an unspeakable aura of terror radiating throughout the heavens and earth. Seeing the figure walking atop the lightning, the Seventh King, who was always sinister and composed, finally revealed a hint of dread, exclaiming in shock,